And then, as far as letting people in,
I guess I am. Oh, okay, cool. I'm fine. Finally making the decision to go ahead and order this. Now the market.
let people in. I'm supposed to
Yeah, sure.
So maybe the participants, you can pop out if you need to.
Will it pop in when I scroll from?
Yeah, if you scroll down.
That's what we're trying to do too.
Oh, there you go. Go to quick
Just like
participants.
speaking of.
Right there, it says one. Double click it. Okay, yeah, so just pull that off to the side or wherever you want it. Yeah, and it won't show on the share screen. Oh, that's not right. My phone.
How you doing?
We're picking some favorites.
Good to see you too.
Manufactured homes.
Great, thank you.
And
And
some of them are kind of tricky because it says HOA fee is like 1,400, but it's like it should be a land lease. So I was trying to tell them it's like they're going to lower your buying power because that comes right out of your monthly your rent that you have. So yeah,
like the lychee.
but I don't think they realized when they were picking them.
Oh my gosh, that's what I thought. Yeah.
They said they were picking those ones that they picked because they had
Laura
garage.
Lynn says she hasn't heard of it.
You
I'm
just
like,
gotta
no,
know.
Wait a minute.
I'm waiting for you.
Wait a minute, I understand. I thought something else.
One of them said the HOA was 14 and I don't think the other one had a land
Haley
lease.
knows everything and Laura Lynn knows
It's a premier.
nearly everything.
Yes, it's a premier.
No.
Okay, for sure, yeah, people are crazy.
And how much of an HOA can they
So,
handle?
I would
Not
like
really
to
any.
schedule with Stephanie, but I need to.
There's no
you guys want to-
Yeah.
Right.
and-
They said, well, they were asking about a cosigner too, if that will actually raise their
You wanna do it in
purchasing
person?
power.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
you're
well,
still.
By how much does it go by what the cosigner is?
It depends on what staff. You know, we saw the calendar.
Yeah,
I know.
we're booked too, and bold is like all day, you know?
Do you do both?
We're gonna do bold, yeah, so starting tomorrow and then for the next 6 weeks.
Yeah,
Hear
'cause
ye, hear ye.
Yeah.
The meeting is about to start.
So that you can teach it also, or just so you have an idea of what it is?
Idea, gain experience, you know, speak more.
This might just be a
language,
Zoom or a
in real
one-on-one.
estate. And then also just all the habits that you build. Like, it's like,
They made it grand so long, I
So
think
it's-
people are
it
just
takes
doing their thing.
all the knowledge from.
I think
all
we'll get
these
some of the
realtors,
usual
some of
suspects.
these years, what's going to end, you know, what's current, it's a.
So what about the divorce?
I'm gonna,
Vision
I'm
and
just,
I.
I'm gonna.
I'll get
go-
started
The entire
as soon as
on
I-
the way back
not
home.
just-
Oh, okay, but I know it, so that's why. This is how did you go? Universal.
Because I had something
Client.
else.
I live in Westlake, so it's an hour.
Or we can just shut the door.
Okay.
Who's in charge?
You ready? Is it yours?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's Stephanie.
So let's definitely work out like a schedule and get on the calendar. Okay, let's take a look at our calendar
I'm
and
gonna
then
run out
send
the
you.
door, but just to finish what I was saying. You.
Oh, hi, Cindy.
Are you taking my class?
No.
Okay.
Joy.
Let's get, sorry.
sorry, thanks so much.
Sorry, you guys.
Look at you, in the way.
We're excited.
Yeah, well, tomorrow? No, okay. Well, have a good class. We'll see you next week.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye.
Somebody's All right, let's jump in. All right, divorce mortgages, what are they? What do we need to do and know? Why doesn't it? Oh, there we go, okay. Okay, so the advantages of working with a certified divorce lending professional or a certified divorce real estate professional. Yes, there is such a thing. And what it does is make sure that these are people who are trained, specially trained to understand the consequences of different things that happen in the divorce. So there's every action affects something. So everyone knows there's the divorce attorney. And when I got divorced, I had a divorce attorney, and that's all I had. And my divorce attorney didn't help me with thing one related to taxes, financial planning, or mortgage and real estate. So I was at a loss. I had no idea there was such a thing as a divorce team. Now I do. You know, you need a team when you're getting divorced. You don't do it on your own or with only one leg of the stool. Otherwise, you're bound to get bad advice.
I have a divorce joke that, so you, or why your divorce is so expensive,
Why?
because they're worth it.
Oh, wow. You know how to get rid of that box there, the little box?
Okay, yeah, no, it's good.
Are we being recorded?
Okay, yeah, it's recorded.
Okay.
Okay, existing properties. So what do we need to know about existing properties in a divorce situation? They must be, we don't need this either, do we? Minimize that. Get you over there. All properties have to be designated as being either marital property or separate property. And if it's a separate property, you have to show either proof of ownership or separation, that it is a separate property, like you signed a deed that said I have sole and separate property. Any change in title has to be agreed upon by both parties. And if there's a credit line involved, by all means, freeze it while the getting's good. And then the determination comes up whether to sell, keep, or negotiate the properties. Here's another thing that I was at a very much of a disadvantage during my divorce was we had a home and I had retirement accounts. And I was on the mortgage. I left the home so that the kids could stay in the home. And I had no idea how to get myself off of that because my ex was not in a position to take over the mortgage. And I had no idea that I could negotiate my retirement funds. Instead, I was stupid and really quick to give them half, you know. And yeah, it didn't work out so well for many years. There's such a thing called a lis pendens. Have you ever run into this in your travels? This is a warning that there's a lawsuit involving real estate. And this is typically filed in a divorce situation. And one thing I didn't realize until I took this training was that it does protect the spouse. So if the ex-spouse, the spouse who's one of them who's on the mortgage goes into BK, the other one is not automatically part of that.
That's good.
Yeah, that is good.
You mean if they went into VK at that time, or like how long, what is the?
Well, it's since the lis pendens. So the lis pendens is what's protecting them from being dragged into that. And then judgment for divorce discharges the lis pendens. So that's just an in-between kind of thing that happens. 3 ways to divide a house. You can either sell, you can have the divorce buyout, refinance buyout, or you can continue to co-own until for a predetermined amount of time. And what's going to really depend on this is your situation with the kids, because if there's kids involved that need a home for a certain amount of time, depends on how much equity you have. In some cases, it might be better if you don't have equity because it's cleaner. But if there is equity and the leaving party needs that equity, then it might be better to just sell or do a refi if you can afford it.
I had a client that's in the same situation, and it's her house is down in Redondo Beach, and it's worth about $1 million to run. But they haven't been in that house for over 5 years, so we did the calculations. It's not enough equity to really satisfy both parties. So she's still in the same house, and she's got a 15-year-old. So she says her husband, I guess, is going to give her 3 more years until that 15-year-old can actually graduate. Then they're going to go back in and negotiate and probably sell
That's
that house.
perfect.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
so I've been in the middle, sort of like the middle, and I had to refer her to, a divorce, finance person.
Okay,
uh,
yeah,
That was down in Orange County, and
Yeah.
so she told me thank you, because she didn't even know that
yeah.
you guys had a certification to deal with
Yeah.
these matters, and so.
Certified divorce financial advisor.
And that's what he is.
Yes, yeah, they're great. We also, Christina and I have a mutual client who's in the situation where he is also divorced and his ex-wife is still on the loan, and they both are still on the loan. She has the house. But in this case, luckily, he's been making the payment, or she's been making the payments for the last 12 months. So I don't have to include that in his debt. So there are things that we can work with here.
Okay.
I can't read what that says.
Emotional attachment.
Oh, yeah, there's always emotional attachment issues that we have to worry about, and affordability issues. So you never know when it comes to how to divide a home, whether to keep or sell. You got to think of a lot of different things and explore a lot of different what ifs before it's clear what the decision is.
Especially when there's kids involved.
Yes. And I get people, 99% of the time, they come to me thinking they want to keep the house and refinance it and try to buy the other partner out. And I am always one to encourage fresh starts, sell the house, just get another one, unless it's just not feasible for some reason.
A lot of times it has to do with the school district that they're in and the friendships that the kids have. And so, yeah, I mean, I've listened to that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff. And you're on the phone and you're just listening.
Yeah, and it would be nice if the kids were always the number one consideration in a divorce, but almost always there's one side at least that wants to think of themselves more than the other, but whatever. Support in new mortgages. So there's a timing issue here. If you are the paying spouse, so you have to start paying support, then you want to purchase a home after your separation date so that your ex doesn't have any ownership involvement in it, but preferably before the judgment is finalized. And the reason for that is because until it's in writing that says that you are required to give X dollars a month in support payments, I don't have to count that in your debt.
Oh.
Yes, so it's tricky.
That's so interesting, because our one client, they wouldn't do anything till after they were waiting.
Mhm. Yeah. If you are on the receiving end of income, alimony income or support of some sort, then you want to, we can use your support as income as soon as you have any kind of written agreement. It doesn't have to be a divorce decree. And you can prove that you have received support payments for at least 6 months on a conforming, 12 months on a jumbo loan. And there has to be continuation for 3 years. So the agreement either has to stipulate that it's going to be paid for more than 3 years, or depending on the child's age and the child's support situation. If they're 17 years old, you're not going to be getting that support for very long. So, sale of the marital home. If you've lived in the home as your primary for 2 of the last 5 years, you can take advantage of the capital gains exclusion of $250,000 each. So timing is somewhat important there as well. Both spouses must stay on title until the house is sold or agreed to be refinanced, what have you. And then if you're converting an investment property to a primary, it's very tricky. So make sure that a CPA gets involved, because there's too many moving pieces that I didn't bother to put them on the slide. Okay, this is important for you guys to know. If there's a listing, if you're doing a listing and there's a divorce involved, you want to pre-screen to make sure you need to know who's on title of the property now, has the dissolution been filed, who's on the mortgage, how emotionally divisive is it? Because you've got to be talking to the right person. You've got to make sure that both sides are cooperating. If both sides are not cooperating, at least go in with eyes open and have a game plan of some sort and know what your legal potential issues might be. That's why you want to do the pre-screening on the title. And protect your commission, the way to do that, is to always get a certified copy of the petition that allows the sale of the home, so you can't have somebody come back and say, no, it wasn't allowed. If there's a disagreeing spouse, they could interfere with the sale and sabotage your efforts to sell very easily. So you can go to, if you can somehow prove that, you can take it to a judge and say, this person is not cooperating, and they can make him cooperate or make them sell. But hopefully you will open up some communication with that person to get them comfortable with you and make them feel like you are representing both sides, even though the wife might have picked you. You want to get some, or vice versa, you want to get some buy-in as much as possible. But as a safety net, adding contingencies on your listing is a very smart idea. So if they're selling the property for $1 million, then your contingency would be, or on your listing agreement with them, you could say, as long as we get an offer of at least $1,100,000 or whatever the magic number is, you have to accept it. Because then that way the disagreeing spouse will not be contesting every single offer and asking for more.
Would that be put on a separate addendum?
Or listing agreement.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
Listing agreement,
Listing
yes.
agreement, okay.
Yes. And did you know that you can't discuss that there's a divorce in process with anybody, with any
Yes.
potential buyers?
Yes, that is confidential.
Yeah, it is. And you don't want them to find out. And I was thinking to myself when I first heard that, I thought, oh, why, you know? And then I thought, oh, well, I guess the neighbors could be coming in, looking at the house, and turning over the house or whatever. Maybe they don't want the world to know, so. And make sure that the list pendants is removed if you are in the process of selling. Now, that's all
I'm just
about
laughing.
divorce. Okay, that's all you need to know about a divorce right now. And
We're just calling you.
yeah, but I want to talk about how to prevent them. I like this part. So it's all about communication.
I could just laugh here.
It's all about communication, disclosing, communicating, agreeing. And here's the very common sense.
Before you go.
Suggestions. Yes, before you, and actually, most of this I picked up from a presentation about prenups, which is absolutely true, but it completely works in any kind of partnership. And it doesn't even matter if you are already married, been married, whatever, been in a partnership, whatever. These are things, these tips I'm gonna give you are things you can pick up along the way and start now. It's not a, gosh, I had my chance 20 years ago, oh well, you know. So know before you go. So marriages today, they're much more complicated than in our parents' era, where the dad usually went to work and the mom stayed home with the kids. And, you know, yeah, there was one house and, you know, both names were on it. And I mean, it was pretty cookie cutter. You could exactly figure out what the scenario was. These days, I mean, kids are buying houses before they're married, you know, they have assets before they're married, they have debts before they're married, you know, they have all kinds of things going on. So it's complicated. It's much more these days like a merger between two corporations than it is between two people in a lot of ways. So due diligence is needed so that you can understand the marital finances and establish guidelines around them. This is where the open communication really pays.
So when two unmarried people take title, is it like tenant in common? Is that the only way that they can take title? Suppose if one, I imagine they would also have to have a living trust of their own indicating what to do with their half, correct?
Well, I mean, that's definitely advisable.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
how would you do that? Because, but anyway, go ahead.
yeah, that's definitely advisable. And yeah, I mean, I'm assuming people are gonna get married and that's sort of the vein that I'm going here, but it could be any unmarried couple.
Unmarried couple,
Because that's very common.
Yeah.
My daughter told me that I soured her on marriage and I said, you're welcome, you know, and so it's very common and understandable, but yeah.
Yeah.
You can be joint tenant, but you know, if you're gonna go into a house, for example, do it with eyes wide open and do these things that I'm gonna go over with you. It's even more important in that situation because great partnerships aren't built on blind faith and trust. It's very important to set a solid foundation. And then, you know, that that way things will work. So number one, disclose and discuss finances on paper, not just casual. Okay, and this means, how does your income work? How are you paid? When are you paid? How much are you paid? What are your debts? Let's not have any surprises. List all the debts, and we're talking big debts, small debts, everything in between. I mean, it's not uncommon at all. I can't get over it. It kind of sickens my heart when I do some loan applications and I see couples coming in with $300,000 of student loan debts.
Oh,
You know?
Lord.
It's like, how do you surmount that mountain, to try to get it to a house? Know each other's credit scores and credit histories and paying habits, and know what all the debts are on and off the credit report rather. And then what are the assets? How much money's in the bank? What's the situation with the cars? Are there other houses? Do you have any investments? What kind of things do you have? All of these things should be disclosed, certainly in a marriage situation. There's no trying to keep things a secret. If you're trying to keep things a secret, then you're not ready for a marriage.
How we get divorced.
Yeah. Determine which debts and assets are joint and which are separate. So, there are going to be things like, I like Hulu. You like, Apple Music or whatever. That's your thing. This is my thing. If we're not both in sync on this, then it's your thing, it's my thing. Whereas the rent or the mortgage, that's an our thing. And how are we going to divide that up? And that might not be 50-50. It might depend on who's the major breadwinner, or who, put the down payment in, or, whatever the situation is. That's going to be up to agreement and discussion, and, that's for you to decide, but it should be discussed and determined. Happy banking. Don't combine everything into one account handled by one spouse, especially if it turns out being the wrong spouse. And you know that if you know the credit report situation. And you can see on a credit report, if one person's a 790 and the other is a 690, who do you think is going to be the better one to keep track of the finances? Don't keep two sole and separate accounts and split the bills in half. That may not be fair. And it may not be that easy, that slam dunk. But do have 3 accounts. You're gonna have your account, you're gonna have my account, and then we have a joint account for the joint bills. And perhaps a forced savings account as an optional. Keeps things clear. Regularly review it and calendar the reviews. Don't just leave it up to chance or say you're going to do it, but have a specific time. It could be Flag Day every year, or whatever, to remind you. Appoint a CFO and meet regularly. One spouse tracks the finances. Who was it that somewhere I was on a podcast probably. Somebody said that they have a weekly financial date night. Now, to me, weekly reviews may be a bit much. I mean, unless you're in the really advanced stages of trying to meet a specific goal, but otherwise monthly is probably fine. But do an annual review for a deeper dive. And there's some very important things in this list that, especially for new relationships, that should be reviewed on a regular basis and should be certainly discussed up front. Life insurance, car and home insurance, determine savings, retirement goal, contribution goals, travel plans, large purchase planning, having a child, buying and renovating a house. These are things that you shouldn't just assume you're on the same page with. It's a very good idea to talk ahead of time about what each other thinks about these various things. And it's also important, even when you get to the point where you've got determined, this is mine, this is yours, there's still that sort of, I'm looking for, respect. If, for example, you know, your free money is your free money, but if I'm gonna go out and buy a motorcycle, for example, I might wanna check with my spouse and say, you have any objection to me buying a motorcycle? You know, they might think, yeah, safety purposes, don't do it, or they might say, that's huge, let's save up for a vacation instead. And then have contingency conversations. I loved this because there's things that we don't always talk about with each other. Expectations around both spouses working. That would have probably saved my marriage if we would have talked about that. How do you feel about debt and spending? That would have probably saved my marriage if we would have talked about that. What's our savings plan? There really wasn't one in my situation. Oh my God, I can't read that. Kids, yes, no, how, when? Public or private or faith-based school. Parental care responsibilities, you know. Do you have sick parents? Do you have parents who make no money? Who's going to be responsible for them? Do you need life insurance? This is a good one. Family and friends boundaries, rules around lending them money, inviting them into the home, time spent with them. Definitely worth talking about. And are we clear about what's yours, mine, and ours? And then there are always going to be times when things get a little bit tough. And I love this suggestion that either partner can call for counseling. And if they do, if they hold that card, then it's mandatory. And you can say, okay, we're going to do, there's 3 sessions that are mandatory in a row before you can decide that you don't, that you're tapping out, you know. But if I call it, or if you call it, the other one has to go, whether they feel like it's needed or not.
They need to teach this in school.
I know. And then you can also say, okay, we agree that if we get to the point where we feel like we need a divorce, we have to have at least six counseling sessions before we get to that stage. I mean, doesn't this all kind of sink in as you go on each slide? It's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, if I'd only, you know. And then don't forget about why. And when you're talking to the significant other about why you're doing this whole thing, it's because we want to confirm our commitment and we want to put it in writing. And that means that we are both, we both feel that this is important enough that we're willing to write it down, remember it, review it. And this is our understanding and arrangement. So nobody can go veering off way far left field off of that because we talked about it. If you don't remember, look, this is what we talked about. And the purpose of doing this is to reinforce a long and successful marriage built on mutual trust, agreement, and shared goals. That's why you would do such a thing. And you want to make sure that you're on the same page, or at least find out early if you're not. So I think that's super important. You know, if all the answers to all the questions previously were not in agreement, then you know you're not on the same page, and you know that maybe you shouldn't take that next important step or do something about it now. And they all looked happily ever after.
That was a good presentation.
Thank you, thank you. Very succinct. If you would like the slides, please sign in. And I forgot to bring my little gift today. But I'm gonna figure out a winner and I'm gonna bring it tomorrow.
That means we all get a gift card.
I was like, damn, I got a good one too. So maybe I'll do 2 next time, or I'll make sure you guys get in the hat, whether you're in my next one or not. So it sounds about that.
That's great.
Short and sweet one today, guys.
Still recording?
Yeah.
No, look, it's fine. I had that in high school back in the day.
I know.
I would have never married the two that I married.
I wouldn't know the right question to ask, but I look at it now and go, thank God I'm not married to them.
My second husband was good when it came to money.
You guys aren't putting your email.
Oh,